Some men come to the edge of the world to find freedom. Others come to bury their past in the silence between stars. But the ones who stay, they're the ones who've run out of places to run. Boaz Callahan rode into Deadmere Crossing as the sun bled itself out across the hills, the sky softening to rust behind him. He looked like a man made from wind and bone, hollowed, hardened, and dry as the sagebrush that scraped the road. His duster clung to him like the sins he didn't speak of, and his eyes scanned the town with the caution of a man who'd seen too many doors kicked open too late. He passed no welcome. A dog growled from under a porch. A woman pulling laundry glanced at him and quickly turned away. The town was small, but it carried itself like a secret. It didn't want to be known, and it sure as hell didn't want to know you. Boaz liked that fine. He didn't need questions, only shelter and whiskey thick enough to scrub the ghost from his throat. He stopped at the livery first, tossing the stable boy 2 coins and a warning not to touch the rifle in his saddle roll. The boy nodded, eyes wide. People always looked at Boaz like he was halfway between outlaw and prophecy, and maybe he was. He didn't correct them. There was power in silence. The saloon was the kind of place that smelled like old sweat and unfinished stories. Piano music warbled from the far corner, barely holding itself together. The moment he stepped through the swinging doors, heads turned. A few eyes lingered on the scar running like lightning from his cheek to his jaw. No one said his name, but silence often says more. Boaz walked to the bar, each step slow and certain. The floor creaked beneath his boots like it had something to confess. The barkeep, a narrow man with tobacco stains on his collar, poured without a word. Boaz drank, and then he saw her. She was near the back, caught in the rough grip of a man who wore money like a second skin, dark vest, gold pocket watch, the air of someone used to being obeyed. He tugged her wrist sharply. She didn't cry out, didn't flinch. Her spine stayed straight, her jaw tight. The girl looked no older than 23, maybe 24, and her dress, though once white, was now the dull color of old bones. Her hair had been pinned, but strands had come loose, curling around her face like they were trying to protect her. Her name, Boaz would learn later, was Temperance Lark. But in that moment, all he knew was that she looked like a flame refusing to go out. "Duke," she said, voice even. "Let go." The man, Duke Mallory, as Boaz would soon learn, smiled the way wolves might if they wore suits. Now, Tim, you're forgetting your place again." Boaz turned back to his drink. He didn't come here to save anyone. He wasn't a hero. He'd buried any such ambition beside his wife in Missouri 3 winters back. But the glass trembled in his hand, just barely. That kind of meanness, public, unchecked, got under his skin. Boaz had learned long ago that some wrongs, if left unspoken, start to rot in you. Tim tried to yank her hand away. Duke caught her face, not hard, just enough to humiliate. She stared back with something like pity in her eyes. That seemed to rile him more. Boaz's chair scraped back. The saloon went still. He approached slow, like a man crossing a field that might still hold mines. Duke didn't even look at him at first. "Let her be," Boaz said, quiet as a prayer but twice as sharp. Duke turned. He was younger than Boaz had expected, early 30s, maybe, but with the confidence of someone who'd never lost a fight because he never picked one he couldn't buy. "And who in the hell are you?" he asked, not letting go of Tim's wrist. Boaz didn't answer. He just looked at the hand, then at Duke, then back again. His stillness said everything. "You got a badge under that coat?" Duke asked, smiling with too many teeth. "No," Boaz said, "and you should be glad of that." For a moment, Duke's smile faltered. Then he shoved Tim away. She stumbled, but didn't fall. Her eyes flicked to Boaz, unreadable. "You want to play the part of a white knight, stranger?" Duke said, stepping forward. "You better know what that costs around here." Boaz didn't blink. "I'm not here to play anything." He turned to walk away, but Duke grabbed his shoulder. A mistake. Boaz moved without thought. Elbows snapping back into ribs, boots sweeping Duke's legs, the man hitting the floor hard enough to shake the walls. Gasps rose like smoke. Boaz loomed over him. "I said let her be," he repeated. "This your first language, or do I need to write in blood?" Duke wheezed, clutching his side. The barkeep reached under the counter. Boaz raised a hand. Don't, he said. I'm not staying. He turned to Tim, who was watching him with narrowed eyes, arms crossed tight. You all right? He asked. I was, she said, before you made me look weak. Boaz nodded once like he deserved that, and maybe he did. He walked out into the night without another word, the door swinging behind him like a judge's gavel. The air had cooled. The stars were starting to blink their old songs awake. Back in the saloon, Duke Mallory spat blood and swore revenge. And Boaz Callahan, saddle-sore and soul-weary, lit a cigarette with hands that trembled just a little more than he'd like. He hadn't come to this town to fight, but some fights, it seems, come looking for you. And some women don't need saving, but they do deserve to be seen. The morning came bruised and pale, dragging its light slow across the hills as if it, too, were unsure whether to return. Boaz Callahan sat outside the abandoned church, rolling tobacco with fingers still stiff from last night's violence. The bruise on his cheek had flowered deep purple, but he didn't touch it. Pain, he figured, was just a language you learn to read without wincing. He'd slept on a pew, the wood cold and cracked like a confession too long held in. The church had no roof, only sky. Vines grew through the floorboards, and birds had nested above the altar. No sermons echoed there anymore, only wind and ghosts. It suited him. The girl was there, too. Temperance Lark. She'd found the place not long after he did, appearing at the door without warning, as though the night had delivered her. Boaz hadn't asked why. He could see it in her eyes. Something had cracked. And when it cracked, it spilled her into this place. She sat across from him now, wrapped in a gray shawl, her face half in shadow. Her hair was down, wild, her expression unreadable. She looked at him like he was a riddle she didn't want to solve. I didn't ask for your help, she said at last. Boaz didn't flinch. Didn't offer it, either. Just couldn't stomach the way he touched you. She let the words hang in the air, not answering, not denying. After a long moment, she said, He'll come looking. Boaz nodded, licking the edge of his cigarette and lighting it with a match he struck against his boot. Let him. You talk like you've got nothing to lose. He exhaled smoke slow. I don't. Tim looked away, her jaw tightening like she didn't want to believe him, but did. By midday, word had spread through town. Duke Mallory, black eye and bruised ribs, had put a price on Boaz's head. $50 for the stranger's name, $100 for his body. The sheriff, a lazy-eyed man in a too-clean badge, had made no protest. Duke's cattle built this town. His money bought its silence. Boaz spent the day patching a hole in the church wall, hammering salvaged wood into place, while Tim swept the floor like the act might sweep something from her soul. They worked in silence, but not in tension. A kind of rhythm grew between them. Not warmth, just a shared stubbornness, a refusal to bow. Later, Boaz found her behind the church, sitting by a rusted washtub with a torn apron in her lap. She was stitching it with steady hands. He watched her a long while. Why stay? He asked finally. Tim didn't look up. Because running got me here. That man, Boaz said. He think he owns you? He owns the roof I used to sleep under, the food I used to eat. She met his eyes. What does that make me? Boaz looked away, ashamed not of her answer, but of the truth in it. That night, Tim cooked beans over a low fire while Boaz cleaned his rifle. She didn't ask what he planned to do with it, and he didn't offer. They were two people caught in a story neither had started, but both refused to flee from. As dusk bled into night, the first stone hit the church door, then another, then glass shattered, one of the few unbroken windows they had. Boaz rose, rifle in hand. Tim pulled her shawl tighter. A voice rang out from the dark. Callahan, come on out now. Give us the girl, and we'll let you walk. Boaz stepped into the doorway, silhouetted by the fire behind him. I ain't giving you anything, he called. But you're welcome to come try and take her. A murmur from the darkness. Laughter. Then a gunshot cracked the air and bit into the church wall inches from his head. Boaz fired back. Not at anyone, just into the night. A warning. The shadows retreated. For now. We came back inside. Tim was pale but still standing. You didn't have to do that, she whispered. I did, he said. Not because of what he did to you. Because of what this town let him do. Her eyes softened, just for a breath. That night, sleep came hard. Boaz sat with his back to the door, rifle in his lap, watching stars claw their way across the broken ceiling. He wondered if he'd just invited death into the room, but he didn't regret it. At dawn, he woke to the sound of metal clanging. He stepped outside and found Tim hammering nails into the side of the church, trying to hang a rusted horseshoe above the door. "For luck," she said, without looking at him. Boaz chuckled low. "You believe in that?" "No," she said, "but I believe in signs." He took the hammer from her, finishing the job with 2 swift strikes. A voice called from the edge of town. "Callahan." They both turned. It was the sheriff. Alone, arms raised. "I come with a warning," he said, panting. "Duke's got men riding in. Not just from town, guns from Abilene. They'll burn this place to ash." Boaz stepped forward. "How long?" The sheriff swallowed. "Nightfall. Maybe less." Boaz nodded. Tim spoke behind him. "What do we do?" He looked at her, and something shifted in his eyes, something that hadn't stirred in years. "We don't run," he said. As the sheriff rode off, Boaz walked back inside and laid the rifle across the pew. Then he reached into his saddlebag and pulled out something he hadn't touched in 5 years. A 6-pointed star dulled with age. Tim saw it and froze. "You were a lawman." "I was a man who tried to be one," he said. She stepped closer. "You still are." Boaz looked at her then, really looked, at the bruises that hadn't yet faded, the calluses on her hands, the flame in her. "You're the first thing in years that's made me want to be." Outside, the wind picked up, and in the distance, hooves. The sky bruised purple by dusk, and the wind changed. It carried dust like memory and something darker beneath, gun oil, sweat, menace. Boaz Callahan stood at the edge of the broken church doorway, his rifle cradled in steady hands. The silver star sat pinned to his chest, not for show, but as a quiet reckoning. Behind him, Temperance Lark lit the last of the lanterns, her eyes flicking to the windows and then to him, as if trying to memorize him before something final split the world apart. "They'll come through the north end," Boaz said. "The road's wider, and there's no cover for ambush." Tim nodded without argument. She'd spent the day boiling water, hammering nails into boards for the windows, and placing broken glass beneath the tall grass. Her hands bled from it, but she hadn't flinched. Fear had given way to something stronger. She no longer moved like prey. Boaz turned, watching her tie back her hair with a strip of her old apron. "You could still leave. Slip out through the canyons." "I'm tired of running," she said. "And I'm tired of letting men like Duke Mallory write the end of my story." Boaz almost smiled, but something in him resisted softness. There wasn't room for it yet. They waited. The sun fell, slow and reluctant, until only the lanterns marked them as living things in the dark. Then came the sound, hoofbeats, slow and confident, like they knew no one would stop them. 4 riders crested the hill first, rifles across their laps. Behind them, more, 6, maybe 7. Mallory came last, atop a stallion black as soot. His face was swollen, one eye ringed in yellow and blue. The rest of him was polished rage. He wore gloves now, fine leather, and had replaced his pistol with a long-barreled Colt that looked ceremonial. He stopped just outside the churchyard, spitting into the dirt. "Callahan," he called, voice curling like smoke. "I was willing to let you ride out. All you had to do was walk away. But now you got her playing sheriff too? Bad habit. Saving women who didn't ask." Boaz stepped out, rifle at his side. "She's not yours to talk about." Mallory laughed. "That's where you're wrong. She was mine. Fed her, dressed her, kept her alive when no one else would have touched her." Tim appeared beside Boaz then, hands clenched, unarmed. "I would have rather died," she said. "And you kept me like a thing, not a woman." Mallory's smile curled into something sharp. "Then I'll bury you both." The first shot cracked before Boaz could raise his rifle. A bullet shattered the window inches from Tim's head. She didn't duck. Boaz pulled her behind the wall and returned fire, quick and precise. One of the riders dropped. Another screamed and fell from his horse. The rest scattered into motion, yelling, reloading, circling. Inside, they moved like dancers through ruin. Boaz reloaded by memory. Tim fetched the bucket of boiled water, tossing it onto the step where they'd laid the broken glass. One man slipped trying to rush them, his knee splitting on the shards. Boaz hit him with a clean shot to the shoulder. Gunpowder thickened the air. Flames licked the church wall. Someone had thrown a torch. Tim beat it back with her shawl, face streaked with soot. She didn't cry out when sparks caught her dress. Boaz stomped it out, hand lingering on her arm just a breath longer than needed. "I told you I had nothing to lose," he muttered. That might have been a lie. Tim looked at him like he'd just spoken in a language she'd waited her whole life to hear. But there was no time for reply. The last push came suddenly. Two men from the side, one from the back. The door splintered. Boaz dropped one. The second swung a rifle like a club, catching Boaz in the ribs. Tim grabbed the burning lantern and smashed it across the attacker's face. Fire took his scream before Boaz's bullet could. The last man turned and ran. Silence crashed in like a tide. Mallory was gone. Boaz stepped outside, boots sinking into churned mud and blood. The moon cast everything in silver. Across the field, one rider galloped alone. Boaz lifted the rifle. Tim stepped forward and put a hand on the barrel, gently lowering it. "No more," she said. Boaz nodded, chest heaving. He dropped the rifle. By dawn, the sheriff arrived with half the town behind him, most of them barefoot, some still in nightshirts. They came like witnesses to something ancient. When they saw the bodies, the fire scars and the blackened earth, they did not cheer. They only stared. The sheriff looked at Boaz, then at Tim, and spoke soft. "You two just did what none of us could." Tim answered, "We just stopped pretending we couldn't." They buried the dead behind the church. Boaz said the names he knew. Tim placed stones. No one said Mallory's name. Some names rot quicker when left unspoken. Days passed. The town changed slow, like an old man learning to walk again. The saloon stayed open, but the piano played different songs. Women started gathering by the church, patching the roof. A school bell replaced gunshots. Boaz spent his mornings mending fences, his evenings on the porch with Tim, watching the sun drag its gold across the sky like a final promise. They didn't marry. They didn't speak vows. But one night, Boaz found her by the door, holding the star he'd worn that night. She'd polished it. "You should wear it again," she said. Boaz took it, turning in his hand. "No," he said, voice gentle. "You should." She smiled, sad and proud. Years later, children would ask why the church was made of mismatched wood, why their teacher had a scar on her arm, and why the quiet man who watched from the porch never spoke during storms. And she'd tell them, softly, some people save the world by staying. She never said his name at the end, only looked to the hills where he once rode in, looking for nothing, and stayed to build everything.